This is the end of the first stage of One Piece. So far, Toei's adaptation, in my opinion, for the time it aired and the technology and standards, is incredible. From the first chapter to the end of the Skypiea, which marks the end of the 4 thirds in One Piece, the studio have been improving every single aspect in which it was in their hand. Work on the backgrounds to make them more detailed and colorful, better animation adapting to the manga, which has been getting more and more complex in its battles and character designs, which both together can always complicate the fluidity of some cuts. And in direction I am especially struck by the amount of good transitions that the director adds in the storyboards. Thanks to all this and the sound design, even with the passage of time and the improvements in the production of an anime, it is an adaptation that remains as a product more than visible today. It is still highly recommended. Speaking of Skypiea itself, I have no problem with transitional arcs, those that are more self-contained, and don't make advance a work as much as they help to strengthen bonds between characters and give them some more development. While Skypiea is far from filler, as it expands and introduces important new concepts from the Grand Line, such as there are other types of fruit besides the Zoan, names Luffy's type of fruit, the Paramecia, and names one of a seemingly superior type such as the Logia that Enel has, that gives him the power of lighting, expands the knowledge of what the Poneglyph are in the real story, and the empty century. However, the island itself located in the sky, and the way the Straw Hats access it, makes it clear that it's a different narrative thread to the one we have been following the protagonist with, as a kind of detour, almost like a dream. And this is made even clearer when no new members of the crew are introduced, as we have seen before and in the following ones, but again, Eiichiro Oda deliberately decides to play with what he has right now in his characters and plant seeds for the future. It is here that we see more recurring jokes among the crew, or we see Robin interact more naturally with each crew member, establishing her personality within the Going Merry. There are transitional arcs that are bad, other works that don't need one, and others that have a good transitional arc. Skypiea is one of the good ones, and in some moments, it's really good. For this new island, as always, Oda takes inspiration from different cultures. First, he takes visual references and some situations from classic European literature. Pinocchio, or even, strangely enough, from Don Quixote on more than in one occasion. To shape the Shandians, he uses as reference the ancient cultures of South America and Native Americans, while for the inhabitants of Skypiea, numerous references were taken from the Christian religion, some widespread stories such as Noah's Ark or the City of Gold, as well as from the colonialism that the new continent suffered from Europe under a Christian doctrine and the Word of God. The lightning, the inhabitants in an apparently paradisical sky, and their imminent destruction are Christian, Greek, and Nordic references, although there are also references to Buddhism in Enel and the use of the mantra. It is really interesting how the mangaka takes all these elements and makes them his own, and they become part of his iconography, and that even though each island has its own particularities and functioning, they have their own constants and a surprising aesthetic homogeneity. So, with all this setting, what does Oda cover or address with the context it presents on his island? What is it to be a god? Is God all-powerful or all good? On the one hand, we have the character of Gon Fall, the former leader of the Sky People, who everyone referred to as God. This god wanted to unite the Sky People with the Shandians to try to coexist and end a 100-year-long conflict over control of the ancient land of the Shandians. But, Although he is a man who seeks peace, he is not powerful enough to stop Enel from staging a coup, proclaiming himself the new god and beginning an era of tyranny and a plan for the annihilation of the entire floating island. We can also see how after the ending of the arc, Gunfall becomes god again, but this time he is chosen by all the inhabitants of Skypiea, which makes him the first democratic representative of a country in the entire world, leaving aside what happened in Drum, which becomes more of a collaborative community without a fixed leader, being a world in which totalitarian and authoritarian leaders thirsty of power predominate, or the monarchy, which, although benevolent as in Alabasta, is still ruled by a dynasty. On the other hand, we have Enel as a figure attributed to himself as God, because he is invincible and omnipresent, but exercising dictatorial politics and pushing the people of Shandar and the warriors of heaven to war under an ancient hatred, for a broken promise, for a fruitless dream. Oda asks during the entire work whether dreams die when the berries do too, whether ideas are unique to an individual or can become inherited and affect their descendants, and also about the truth behind the story. I mentioned that this arc has some very good moments. The truth behind the tale of Nolan the Liar is one of them. This is also a story about unearthing the past, of embracing it many times and being able to look forward once you have reconciled with, but also discovering the truth about what is buried deep in written history. When we first learned about Nolan's story, I thought, okay, this can be all of it, there has to be more to it. But I didn't expect his story with the island and the end of Mont Blanc's quest to be the best part of the arc. Oda is a master of developing isolated stories and backstories of various characters, connecting with his readers with apparent simplicity, and how well he measures every panel, every sentence and twist in that he manages to create memorable moments in these fragments of story. With this flashback of Nolan and his complicated relationship with the Shandians, touching recurring themes already in One Piece, friendship, moral duty and civil duty, understanding and respect between cultures, and the explanation based on religion to some misfortunes that in this case the Shandian tribe has suffered over the generations that have been maintained in the form of traditions and legends. And it is this new perspective of Nolan and his crew, who are committed to scientific and respectful progress in the field of botany, who help these people to begin to leave the cave. What was once a sea god is now just a snake. What was once a divine punishment requiring human sacrifice on an altar is now a disease caused by trees that were dead for decades. And all this takes place while the friendship between Calgara and Nolan grows stronger, with the final promise, after a misunderstanding, that one day they will meet again on this island with the Golden Bell. With Nolan's execution, Oda wanted to reprise the parallels and at the outcomes of those who seek freedom and want to know more of the world, in the face of a strict and controlling government. For it is when you try to control these rebels, and those who try to discredit governments or let the leaders or monarchs down, that many of them have a fateful outcome, in which they either become martyrs or fall into oblivion. Goldie Roger, before the gates of death, decides to smile at destiny and accept it willingly, because he had already won the world. But Nolan did not smile. What is left in a person when he is totally discredited, the only thing he can bring out are tears, sadness.
人の夢は終わらねえ。
That's right. Cricket stood his ground just like the Mugiwara at that time and continued to pursue that same dream of reuniting with that sound. To show the world that Nolan was no liar, that written history is a lie, and that the City of Gold, the Golden Bell, really existed. The silhouette of Luffy in the sky projected like the giants at the beginning of the arc is the ultimate proof that cricket needed. The Golden Bell was in the sky. The Mont Blanc and Calgara finally fulfilled their dreams. I wish many transitional arcs were like Skypiea. With all that said, I have plenty of confidence in what Oda continues to write in his work. He has so clear about the foundations that defines his characters and his world that I see it very unlikely that he will betray himself in the future. And with the potential seen and my knowledge of what may come next, I think Skypiea is far from being the peak that the world can reach, marking the end of the first stage of One Piece, both for its anime, with the opening and ending itself helping that feeling of the end of an era. This is the last time there were only 7 Nakamas. And maybe it's the end of a simpler era for the Mugiwara. See ya in Water 7.